This week on the Powell Not Found podcast, we have Major League Baseball debuting and then disappearing again for spring training. We have the Seoul series happening, and also Ohtani and the Dodgers, their debut went perfectly with absolutely no legal trouble at all. Just kidding. Coming up next.
I'm gonna tell you a story about a girl who loves gin. A national pandemic seized her birthday celebration. Although she knew it was coming, we tried not to tell her. She brewed some Irish breakfast tea. She knew her birthday was getting corona.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 12 of the Powell Not Found podcast. This is Mark Powell, the host of the Powell Not Found podcast. It's funny how that works. Welcome for the week of March 23rd or 24th. I'm still a little bit undecided about what day I want to go with for those week announcements, but recording here on Saturday, March 23rd, and what a week it was. Major League Baseball is back, ladies and gentlemen, and you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't be in the wrong if you didn't realize that Major League Baseball debuted, because in their programming genius, they decided, you know what? Let's make the baseball opening day be the most opening day ever. And I mean debuting at dawn on the Eastern Coast and maybe in the middle of the morning on the west coast of the United States. Of course, I'm talking about they opened in Seoul, South Korea, to try to kind of broaden Major League Baseball's reach. Major League Baseball kind of has a problem just with their domestic fans being interested in the sport, but they've decided to kind of go the route the way that hockey's been going, the NHL, the way that football has been brought to London, and they have been taking baseball in their opening days or taking a couple series in the year and making them abroad, inaccessible to the domestic market. And they decided to make opening day between the Dodgers and the Padres this year in Seoul, South Korea. And they opened and they had two games. They split the series 1-1. So the Dodgers took one, the Padres took one. And they were both really good games. But had you been able to actually wake up and watch it, here on the East Coast, it was pretty much greeted with a lot of unenthusiasm, a lack of fanfare, if you will, for these two teams debuting, and two major things happening with the Dodgers in the debut of not only Yamamoto, the prized Japanese pitcher that they signed, but also the debut of Ohtani, happening at 5 a.m. Eastern. Almost seems like a cruel joke. The series went well. The series seemed to be very well attended from just the brief moments I got to look at it while preparing for work and going to work in the morning and getting ready for my commute. I turned on MLB.TV at 5 a.m, looked at all the games, and very weird to see a score ongoing in the top of the fifth at 6 a.m. But turned it on, and it seemed like it was very well attended. I think Major League Baseball is going to come away from this as a raging success outside of all the security concerns that were also happening. There was a threat against the building before the series started. Nothing came of that, but still kind of a scary situation. But I think the attendance, I think the excitement of the fans abroad, I think it's a good thing that Major League Baseball is expanding out that way. But do I think that it should have been two different teams than the teams that were selected to go, the Dodgers and the Padres? If anything, I kind of understand the reasoning behind making it the Dodgers and the Padres. It's probably easier to get two West Coast clubs out to South Korea and back, and not have to deal with major jet lag or major disruption to the regular season. But a little unfair to Dodger fans and Padre fans, right? That opening day was taken away from you guys, right? It was taken away from the actual cities in which they play. and more so for the Dodgers, who just had one of the greatest off seasons ever, signing Tyler Glasnow, who pitched in the first game, which they won 5-2, and signing, of course, Shohei Ohtani. Now, Shohei Ohtani had a different story going on, which we'll get to later in the show, but they didn't get to see that. I mean, it's 2 a.m. when those baseball games are going on for Dodger fans. So unless you're a major fan and willing to risk the horrible tiredness you're going to feel when going to work the next day, you're not seeing those games. That first hit, that single that Shohei Ohtani made as a Dodger, you're never getting that back. They're going to probably couch it in a way where they're going to say, hey, this is the first hit he's had in Los Angeles. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. You took away a great opening day from Dodger fans to garner that international reach, which, to be fair, you have what's his name? Hassan Kim on the Padres, who's from Korea, right? It was probably a great moment for him to come back home. And you have Shohei, whose star power is beyond his star power here in Japan. And you've got Yamamoto, who's also a star in Japan, going back to Korea, but within the region, right? It's not the same country, but within the region, you're taking those players back. You're expanding the reach even further. I'm sure that Major League Baseball will look at this weekend as a success, albeit how odd it is to have 2 regular season games in the books and then have another week of spring training when games don't matter. And boy, did it show, especially in that second game. Max Muncy looked like he was just learning how to play third base with 2 errors in the game and 3 balls that basically got by him. And Yamamoto, his debut was rough. If there was ever a secondary story to come out of this series, it's the fact that Yamamoto throughout the spring has been questionable at best. But that debut, 5 earned runs in 1 inning pitched, is not exactly a great taste to leave in your mouth with another week of spring training, and then the regular season kicking off on the 28th. He is not looking good, and that's probably not the greatest confidence boost going back into the regular season, knowing that your first outing, you got 3 outs, and you got basically, tattooed by a well-rounded offense in the Padres. So that's probably not the greatest feeling in the world. He left a lot of balls up. A lot of those splits, that's the problem with the splitter. If you leave the splitter up in the zone, it's going to get tattooed. You're looking at a meatball changeup, if that's the case. If you're not getting on top of that ball, if you're not driving through that splitter, you're going to get hit. It's not going to play. You're going to it's basically going to be a fastball playing against a meatball changeup. And that's exactly what was happening. He was just missing location up in the zone, and he was getting punished for it. It'll be interesting to see throughout the season if Yamamoto comes back and you start seeing more of his old form that he's kind of known for. But if he doesn't, it's probably a bad omen for things to come, and all of a sudden that contract starts looking a little bit sour. I think you have other teams kind of exhaling a little bit after that first outing, going, glad. Maybe it's a good opportunity that we missed the opportunity to sign this guy. But it's one start, right? And it's spring training. So you can't read too much into it, but not a great way to start off your Dodger career. The other thing about this whole series that was really front and center, and again, this might be just me being old man and not getting accustomed to the changes that baseball's making, including moving some of these bigger games to different countries and losing that opening day kind of feeling, is the prevalence of the ads on the uniforms. We're getting to uncharted territory here If you watch the Seoul series, if you woke up and watched the Seoul series, I apologize because you must be really tired right now. Go get yourself a cup of coffee if you watch those two games. And you might have noticed that not only were the ads in Korean, which I thought was actually a nice little touch, you had ads on the uniforms, which started a year ago. The Yankees, as you might know, they have a Star Insurance deal that goes for a number of years. Last year, the Padres had Motorola on their side, on the side of their uniforms, and this year they had Google Play, but I believe it's Google Play. It was translated into Korean, and I think that's the one that they're going with this year. If it's not the same, maybe it was just that one for the international series, but I can't imagine. I think it would probably be Google Play this year. I couldn't find any confirmation on that, but I imagine it's probably that advertiser the whole year. But the ads have doubled. They've multiplied. They are on the helmets now. And this was teased out last year at the advent of the uniform ads coming to the side of their arms there, and they look bad. They look really, really bad. And the design of some of these ads are really, really bad. And that's kind of expected when something new is happening. Placement, how they kind of mesh with the uniforms. These are just terrible. The Dodgers, if you watch the game, the Dodgers have a Guggenheim patch on their uniform, on the, I guess it would be right sleeve of their uniform. That Guggenheim is an investment firm and a bank, so nothing quite like an investment firm to be advertising with the everyman sport. There's nothing more relatable than seeing that shoved in your face every 5 seconds. But they also had a different Korean ad on the helmets, and it's unclear to me at this moment whether the helmet ads are coming for this season or if that was just something in Korea. But if they are, oh man, we're heading into some bad territory. The uniforms are, to me, were the prestige of Major League Baseball. If you ever went to a minor league game, and minor league games don't get the amount of attendance, they don't get the amount of gate revenue, even though they might be more fun to sometimes go to as a family or whatever. They have ads everywhere. I mean, the outfield wall, it is a fight in of itself just for space, for negative space to fill on an outfield wall at a minor league park, because they're trying to drive revenue, right? They're not getting as much for tickets. They're not getting as much for, I'm assuming, jersey sales. People aren't as invested in their minor league teams. The ones that are, good on you, but it's just not the same as Major League sports. I imagine this would be probably the same throughout most minor league sports. So they have to do that. But I think that there's a sentiment that once you get to the major leagues, all of that stuff kind of lessens, and you get to put on your uniform, and now it's starting to kind of look the way that an F1 uniform looks like. There are patches. There's patches on the helmets. There's patches on the bases. What else? When Major League Baseball parks started to kind of up their ad game in the outfield and in the stadium, it was a little bit jarring, because I don't think if you look back at old baseball games, you don't see that much. You don't see the advertisements on the walls. You see very much like a boring field, not really covered in ads. And you know what? It helps you focus on the game. There is nothing more distracting than seeing red Adobe in the back of the backstop at Wrigley Field while you're trying to watch an at-bat. It is very, very difficult after a while. It's distracting. It takes away from the game. The Yes Network does in-ad commercial breaks, or in-game commercial breaks, where they make the screen tiny so that they can sell you on Snuggies. Snuggie diapers or whatever. It's just in your face all the time. John Sterling ends every single inning that the Yankees are powered by Jeep. These are the kind of things. The fourth inning, the first walk of the game, is brought to you by Geico. It is pervasive in a way that is insane. And where does it stop? That is my question. Where does the pervasiveness of advertising stop in Major League Baseball? At what point does the drive to make more money in this sport say, do we really need the Los Angeles on your uniform? Why don't we take that away and put a nice old ad for Heinz ketchup? Do we really need the NY insignia on the Yankees uniform? Hey, those pinstripes, they take up a lot of room. Why don't we just cover it in ads? And you see that. You see that in other professional baseball leagues, especially in Japan. In Japan and Korea, where I don't think they're as nearly as conservative as Major League Baseball has been for so many years. There are ads everywhere on those uniforms. Everywhere. Where does it stop? I'm really afraid at some point we're going to look 20 years down the line and there's going to be at some point a push that says we got to reel it back. These uniforms are starting to look tacky. If anyone's watched any F1 race and saw the drivers' uniforms, outside of their colors, you'd have a hard time identifying what the hell team they're racing for. Max Verstappen runs races for Red Bull, but good luck finding the Red Bull logo without a couple different glances. Williams has a gigantic Duracell ad on their car, or they used to. I don't know what they have this season, but last season it was pretty prevalent. It is pervasive, and it's getting there. The other thing that I want to kind of point out, too, is that if you're going to have uniform ads, at least graphically design them in a nice way. I mean, some of these patches on these uniforms, they're not even in the color schema of the uniform. I think Motorola was like the worst case of this. The Star Insurance one kind of blended into the New York Yankees color scheme. I feel like they were kind of a little bit in line, but the biggest offender here, I'm going to take to my computer here. If you're not listening online, this is the Dodgers tweeted out this image, and this is from DodgerBlue.com. Of they'll have a Google. Excuse me, it's not the Dodgers Twitter. It's a different user here tweeted out what the new logo on the Dodgers uniform is, which is that Guggenheim. And look at how small that text is. I mean, watching the game, I saw the G, and then the entire game, I was like, what? I can't read that text. It's too small. It's too small. A rookie graphic design decision here. If you're going to make a patch or a seal, you better make it the full logo and not have any text, because otherwise you're going to have the same confusion that I had. I looked up what Guggenheim was and what this patch was and immediately thought an art museum is advertising, until I found that it's an investment firm. It just doesn't work. Like, unless you're genuinely curious about, or if anything piques your interest, I feel like these just jersey ads, these uniform ads, they're just wasted money. They're wasted money made in the name of brand awareness. Now one person could argue, yeah, wait, Mark, you just did it. You just looked it up, right? What it was. That's the whole point. But I'm looking it up so I can criticize it. Not so I can give them business. I feel like these outfield ads, I've been to Yankee Stadium quite a number of times, right? And I've seen that the biggest ad there, I think, is the Delta sign in the back. I've been to Nats Park a number of times. I think they have an ad for Weiss supermarkets for a long time they've had in the back. Not once have I sat here and said, you know what? Since I saw that Delta advertisement on the outfield wall, I'm going to fly Delta. Not once. I don't know who is. Target Field, even the naming rights for the stadium. How many people are going to Target Field going, you know what? Now I'm going to shop at Target because they sponsor my baseball park. It means nothing. It means nothing. When Yankee Stadium was built in 2009, there was a little bit of confusion, at least in the press, about if they were going to rename it Yankee Stadium. And I could swear, I don't have any idea if this is true, but I could probably guarantee that the name was going to have something to do with Delta because of how big that ad is, that they were probably the biggest contributor when it comes to their marketing budget. That's why they have the biggest amount of space. That's why they're in the most prominent position. And maybe they were trying for the naming rights for Yankee Stadium. We certainly saw it with Shea Stadium and Citi Field when that was built. And again, Citi Field, I'm not banking at Citibank just because I see it. But maybe there is a payoff. Maybe there's an ROI to all this stuff. I just feel like I feel like the American public is not that dumb. And maybe that's not a good assumption. Maybe these ads really do work. Maybe people feel like a little bit of an attachment. Trying to think these ads that when people say like, oh, this is the official pizza of the New York Yankees. Couldn't care less. I care if that pizza tastes good. I don't care if the Yankees endorsed it. Because if the Yankees endorsed a bad slice, you know what? My inclination would be like, you know what? I'm a little bit less of a fan now because you made me eat this slice. So I guess it can go both ways, right? So anyways, the ads are pervasive in the Seoul series, but it ended up happening. And now everyone's going back into spring training. And now these games don't matter anymore. And opening day has come, has gone, and will come again on March 28th when it actually is opening day for the USA. And a little bit later in the year, the Mets and the Phillies, I believe, are going to go to London, and they're going to play over there. And at least that will be a little bit more watchable than across the world in Seoul, Korea. And again, let me be clear. I'm endorsing. I like the idea of the spread of Major League Baseball, but I think they kind of missed the mark a little bit, hyping up this series, making it a little bit more watchable for a domestic audience because no one was talking about it. No one. And I like baseball, and I had to kind of double check a number of times going, when is this series happening? So 2 games are in the books. Everyone is still, I guess everyone's at 500, so it's like nothing really happened. So Dodgers get out of the Seoul series 1-1, but that is not the biggest story that's come out of the Seoul series, and we'll touch on this, and then we'll probably wrap up the show. Shohei Ohtani, it may be the reason that his debut, his first hit, his now appearance and his commitment to the other team in Los Angeles was a little bit overshadowed was because of the Shohei Ohtani interpreter gambling story that broke from ESPN, from Tisha Thompson this week. Again, like their article says, the sports world was rocked by the allegations that ESPN kind of laid forward that his interpreter wired $4.5 million to an illegal bookie in California that the FBI was investigating. And the sports world went crazy. Because and apparently Shohei Ohtani had knowledge of this, according to his interpreter, which was then quickly recanted. And the story goes that basically Shohei Ohtani was the victim of theft, which was immediately questioned and sounds bizarre. ESPN kind of laid out a really good article here in that kind of puts out the timeline because of all this stuff was happening so quickly alongside the Seoul series that they've really done a good job kind of putting together exactly what was happening when everyone allegedly found out about what. And now Major League Baseball has since now, at first they weren't going to investigate, and now they have launched a formal investigation themselves, and alongside the FBI investigation of the illegal bookie Matthew Boyer. What a confusing story this is, and what a wild world of speculation that this has caused. Just to give you guys a little bit of insight, if Shohei Ohtani basically did not know that his money was being wired to pay off gambling debts, and Major League Baseball is interested in it because if any of those bets kind of dealt with baseball, we get into a murky area of whether Shohei knowingly violated the rules, even in assisting his interpreter with their debts. Because you can't bet on baseball. You know, I think everybody knows the story of Pete Rose. You can't bet on baseball. And if you do bet on baseball, you're out of baseball. It's a pretty clear rule. Baseball's not, unfortunately, the MLB does not seem to be short when it comes to controversies. And this one seems to be one that's not going to go away for a long time. Kind of like the Astros scandal, the PED scandal. While this one doesn't have the direct implication that games were altered, it certainly raised the question of whether it could have. Now, it doesn't seem like Shohei Ohtani is really the gambling type. It seems like he was kind of caught in a web of a story of where he was trying to help his friend. That seems to be the story that they're going with and that his people are going with now, after his interpreter gave a long 90-minute phone call to ESPN outlining that Shohei was in the know, and that was quickly redacted by the Shohei Ohtani lawyers and by himself, by the interpreter himself. This is bad. I don't think a debut could go any worse for a player being involved with this kind of scandal day one. And not even day one. It's really day zero because opening day hasn't even started. The Dodgers quickly fired the interpreter after realizing that he was allegedly stealing from his client. And we'll see what kind of comes of this later. The thing that really kind of got me was how unaware people can get once they get to a certain level of wealth. The alleged number in question that ESPN is saying is $4.5 million went missing from Shohei Ohtani's account. $4.5 million. Now, to a regular schmo like me, like I notice when $4 goes missing from my account. And I don't have the luxury, unfortunately, to give away money like Shohei does. Now, Shohei is obviously in a position of unimaginable wealth. But he's linked to this because the wiring of the money to the illegal bookie was in his name. And if you know anything about wires, they're not exactly easy to do. It's not like it's not a Venmo. This isn't a Zelle. You're not Zelling $4.5 million. In fact, I don't even know if you can Zelle. I don't even know if you can Zelle over $1,000. This is not a, hey, we went to a fancy lunch, let me split this. This is a lot of money to be going back and forth. And there's a lot of ignorance here that if you transfer that much money, it's not going to get immediately investigated. I mean, there's only so much money an official check can be before at least the bank looks into it going, that's a lot of money to transfer. And so ESPN in their original story, they had said that these wire transfers in September and October, the ones that really kind of broke the story, were each $500,000 in September and October, and I guess all together, all the wires are $4.5 million to pay off this gambling debt. My mind immediately goes, how could you be this unaware if you didn't have any kind of knowingness about the situation? They are pleading complete ignorance for Shohei Ohtani. And maybe that's the case, but his name's on the wire. Surely the bank was going to call you and say, is this okay? What I don't quite understand, too, is like if you're this wealthy, generally speaking, your money is probably handled by a team, right? Like, there are those cases, I think, of when especially in sports cases, where you make so much money, you have a manager. That manager has a team. There's a lot of different eyes looking on things like this in order to kind of facilitate things, even if they want to get all that responsibility off your plate. The fact that it was in the hands of one man, that just seems like a bad plan. The fact that there was no backup, there was no second set of eyes going, is this okay? That just seems like a bad plan for anything, let alone your entire financial stability. But again, I don't think that I'm qualified to talk about this because I'm not in that position of unimaginable wealth. I would think it would be foolish if you made over $1 million a year, as Shohei does, $2 million until his big payday 10 years from now. He makes millions from endorsement deals and advertising deals, that you wouldn't have more than one person in charge of that, or at least you'd have a check and balance system in place to make sure that money is going where money is supposed to be going. It seems very dumb to give out the information to one person and just hope and trust that that person is going to be responsible. So, but again, I can't speak to it. I can't speak to being in that position. Maybe he, the relationship between him and Imahara, who is the translator, Ipe Mizahara, goes back a long time. So maybe there was a built-in trust there that was violated, and we'll see how this kind of goes. This is definitely going to develop. I don't think this is going to be a story that's going to go away anytime soon. If he did bet on baseball, again, it's going to be one of those murky situations where it's like, well, what do? He was paying off debts. Like he was paying off somebody else's debt. He wasn't gambling on baseball. Like what, he was stepping in to get this person even. It doesn't take away the criminality of it, especially considering that California gambling is not legal in California. So there's going to be some sort of face the music or some sort of punishment coming, whether it's from baseball or whether it comes from whatever the investigation is going on. But man, is it a bad way to debut? It's a bad way for the Dodgers to celebrate this new player, new face of their franchise, and immediately tarnished in controversy. You almost feel bad for him. But what else could Major League Baseball expect, really, to be honest? They introduced 5 or 6 years ago when all these sites started kind of permeating the game. FanDuel, MGM, DraftKings, all these different companies coming in. When every single pitch was amended by the way, you can bet on this inning. You can bet literally in game. All these advertisements. You had to expect that someone, somewhere, was a little bit more conservative, was in a meeting room somewhere and said, this is going to affect one of our players at some point down the line. But there's probably too much money on the table to say no. And this is what you get, right? This is what Major League Baseball gets. You introduced gambling and let sports gambling permeate the game. Eventually, your players were going to get in trouble, and and be involved in that thing and be involved in situations like this. This is probably not going to be the last situation that's like this. I just think this is going to be the most important one because it happens to be affecting the face of baseball outside of an Aaron Judge or a Mike Trout. And it is the one interesting player that they're going to say is bringing people back to watch the game. Shohei Ohtani creates conversation around him. And it had to happen to him. So it'll be really interesting to see how ginger they are with how they treat this situation. This is not Barry Bonds. This is not Mark McGwire. This is not Sammy Sosa. This is not Alex Rodriguez. This is not Rafi Palmeiro. This is Shohei Ohtani, the wonderkin from Japan who can play both positions. This is a guy they want in the league for a long time, and they do not want him to be the next Pete Rose. No one, I think, in baseball is rooting for that to happen. But they probably do have to, at some point, administer some sort of, even if it was an honest mistake, they have to set some sort of precedent, right? That, listen, if you're in this situation, you have to let Major League Baseball know so they can deal with it, and so they don't have to deal with it coming out in the press like this. So at some point, I think you're going to see a Shohei suspension. You're probably going to see a Shohei fine at the very least. I don't think you're going to see him banned. I think he makes too much money to be banned, but I think you will see a punishment coming out for Shohei Ohtani. And I think this story is going to develop, and I think eventually they're going to find the truth. I think it's kind of fascinating from a who's telling the truth moment. I think it's interesting from a PR perspective because immediately you have this timeline, and that's why I say everybody go and watch and read the timeline that ESPN has kind of laid out here, also by Tish Thompson, that shows you how communication and how messaging, basically putting forward the right message, can sometimes make it seem worse in a way. In this case, you have a translator basically talking to ESPN for 90 minutes, spewing a story that's fairly straightforward. And then lawyers get involved and PR representatives get involved. And the story dramatically shifts from he was paying off gambling debts to now he was a victim of theft. Whew. That story sounds ripe for journalists, for real journalists to look into, because someone's not telling the truth there. And that's why this story is fascinating. That's why this story is beyond baseball of what is really going on. And so, and the fact, too, that even after the second game of the Seoul series, Shohei Ohtani was not available for comment. I'm sure that's on purpose. I'm sure you even have the Dodgers saying, we don't want any more of this stuff to play out in the press. We want the investigation, whatever that investigation is, to be settled. They're probably getting stuff. They're like, everyone shut up, be mum about it. Dave Roberts had nothing to say on the situation, so everyone's going to be silent until this thing plays out, until the actual truth is figured out. But, boy, is it fascinating. And what a player for this to happen to. But, anyways, to end on a lighter note, I want to end with this because talking about sports gambling is just depressing, and honestly, I don't see the need for it or the appeal for it personally myself. There's an interesting point in that article too. Again, take from it what you may, but at the point where the translator met the bookie, where they've outlined that, they said the translator at the time was making $85,000 a year. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't feel like that's enough money to start sports betting. And maybe that's just because I don't see the appeal in the rush of sports betting, but if you're making $85,000 a year and living in Los Angeles, and then you start to sports bet, are you trying to make your life harder? It seems like, dude, at least get to six figures before you start kind of like gambling your money away. It just seems like he wasn't in a position to start doing that unless he knew he had the power to walk away, and clearly he didn't. After $4.5 million, now in the hole, clearly the guy didn't have the faculty to walk away, which is sad and is troubling, and hopefully after all this scandal goes away, hopefully that guy can right himself. I think that's the humanity in me trying to look at it from that perspective, because that's got to be a really tough situation to go into, just like alcoholism is, and just like how depression is, and or smoking is, and anything that's addictive in that quality is sad to see people who can't get on top of it. So hopefully he'll be able to find the support he needs. Anyways, let's move on to a lighter subject before we close out the show here, because we got about 42 minutes on the dial. And I want to talk about Giancarlo Stanton in spring training. And again, you cannot take anything away from spring training. I'm so glad that spring training is over, because spring training is so boring. I mean, it is just terribly boring. This week, the Yankees are going to Mexico to play spring training games in Mexico, again, in the same kind of way that they're trying to spread the game to other countries, make it a little bit more global. And they're going to Mexico. They're not sending any of their good players. I mean, I think it's Verdugo and Volpe, right? like Soto's not going, G's not going, no one's going to the Mexico game, which I kind of feel a little bit bad for Mexico, because it's like, hey, well, why are we even having this if your everyday players aren't playing? Listen, if you're going to go to Mexico, it might as well be a real game, right? Like we might as well start their opening day. Why is this a spring training game and the Seoul one isn't? Well, somebody riddle me that. But in a spring training game the other day, Giancarlo Stanton, not one home run, not two home runs, not three home not one home run, not two home runs, but 3 home runs in a game in spring training, just socking the baseball each time, including a grand slam. I think he ended up with like 10 RBIs in this game. What an enjoyable sight to see. A healthy Giancarlo Stanton belting home runs. All this talk about his new body, his slimmer look. Guy can still hit mammoth home runs. I mean, it ended up being 1,300 feet of home runs being hit by Giancarlo Stanton. That is what you need from a Yankee offense. And ideally, they've all been looking pretty good. Rizzo's looks like he's on the ball. It does not look like Rizzo's going to have that concussion problem this year. But Giancarlo needs to break out. DJ LeMahieu, after he gets over this injury, this toe injury that they just announced, he needs to come out and bop and bang. He needs to get to a point where he is consistently the machine again. And this was just an early sign of, oh, yeah, Giancarlo's back. And that is a good thing to see as a Yankee fan, especially after the injury to Cole. It's going to take him out probably till like June or July. You need this offense to hit. And so seeing Giancarlo with 3 home runs and a 10 RBI game, I was like, oh, my God, this is the Marlins. This is G from the Marlins. This is exciting. We might have an offense this year that produces more than 2 hits. Maybe I don't have to go into a season thinking that every game we're going to be a no hit by the opposition. This might be a more exciting season than people expect it to be. And let's hope. Because if Cole doesn't have a tear in his elbow, he's back in July and he's pitching. And we got Juan Soto, Aaron Judge, and Giancarlo Stanton. I'm thinking to myself, this could be a really, really fun season to watch for the New York Yankees.
About
And with that, we will wrap up the show. Again, this is episode 12, going over the crazy Ohtani news. I'm sure we'll come back to it. And going over the Seoul series, the series that no one watched because it was too early in the morning. And a little bit of Giancarlo being back with some crazy offense. Everybody, again, please subscribe on the YouTube channel by going to youtube.com/PowellNotFound. I think with the @ symbol, @PowellNotFound, and you can find the channel. Also, go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe to the channel, and just let me know. Comment on the YouTube channel about things that you want me to talk about, and I'll try to accommodate some of that stuff. But guys, thanks for watching the show. It's been another episode. It's been 12 straight weeks, and guess what? I'm coming back. I've been renewed for a 13th week here on the Powell Not Found podcast. See you guys. See you next week. Bye.